Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we document, we create, we document, and we implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is actually a recurring guest, and it's Brett Trembly. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Adi. How are you?
Good. It is such a pleasure to have you back on the podcast because, you really get it. You get systems. So you are an entrepreneur, you're a lawyer, and you actually manage to delegate and to scale and to grow your practice to the point where you will actually are able not to work in the practice. And then you start Staffed Up, which is basically an agency that places, the recruits and places talent, executive assistants, etc. And we'll talk more about that for businesses. And I actually, I referred clients to Staffed Up. You're doing a fantastic job, great service. Everyone that I refer to you are super satisfied. So you're doing you and your team are doing a fantastic job. Awesome. And now you also have a new book, which is called 24 Months of Freedom. And I'm so excited to talk about that book. And that's why you're back on the podcast, because we want to talk more about delegation and about scaling and systems and processes and all of that. But, before we start, I always like to give a shout out to who the person who introduced us. And in this case was Cesar Quintero, who introduced us, and from the Profit Recipe. I had a great interview with Cesar. I'm going to put it in the show notes. Cesar is fantastic. And I think I met Cesar through Jeremy Wise. So again, another shout out to Jeremy Wise and John Corcoran from Rise 25, who produced this podcast. And then all the other people that I know from, the introductions from Cesar and, this whole network of extremely able, fantastic people. So with all of that, let's jump on to our podcast here. Anything else that you want our listeners to know about you before we start talking about your book and your systems and everything?
No, you covered it, Adi. I mean, I still work 1 day per week at my law firm so that I can, maintain a presence. But otherwise, I'm a full-time entrepreneur, and this business gets staffed up. We're the largest by far in the legal world as a staffing company. And we were pre-pandemic, and we've just grown like crazy, especially since the pandemic. Unfortunately it happened, but for us, we were there ready to capitalize and provide solutions and help to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. And what I did is I took my experience in growing, multiple businesses and hundreds and hundreds of our clients, and I put together a roadmap, a game plan for who you should hire and when. And I put that all into this book. It's called 24 Months to Freedom. And it just came out a few months ago. And I'm getting really good, candid feedback about the book. I do not have any hesitation in recommending this book to people, because this is my second book. And the first book I put out was about, it was on the law side, right? And I was a little bit hesitant. Like, you can kind of feel when you don't put your best foot forward and your best work out there, you can sort of feel yourself be a little hesitant to recommend people read it, right? But this, I have zero qualms about recommending that lawyers grab this book, 24 Months to Freedom.
Is it just lawyers?
This book's private. Yes, this book is written for lawyers. I've had, believe it or not, several non-lawyers read it and tell me they already implemented. One guy read it, implemented 2 things from the book, and said he had his best sales month ever because he got himself out of sales. And he went on his first vacation in like 10 years where he was emergency access only. I just want to make sure our listeners understand, because not a lot of our listeners, well, maybe a lot of them are, I don't know, but I would assume that there will be a chunk, a good amount of listeners that are not necessarily lawyers, but knowing you, talking to you, being a guest on your podcast,
referring to your clients that are also not lawyers. It's not just, I mean, those principles apply to any industry. So I would love to keep it generic because I don't want our listeners to tune out right now because they're not lawyers, because it applies to any business, especially in the service industry. And then, but also any business owner that wants to get out of the business.
Yeah.
So why did you call it 24 months to freedom?
That's the roadmap for who you should hire and when. So at the end of 24 months, your business should be in a place where you're no longer being really owned by your business, right? Because if you start a business, but it requires you to be there 100% of the time, you don't really have a business, you have a job, and you're working for yourself, right? And you can't take those vacations like we were just talking about. And so after 24 months, and sure, it could be 18, it could be a little bit longer, but on average, that's, when you get enough revenue, you make your next hire, and then you make your next hire, your next one, because a good team member won't cost you money, they will make you money. So your revenues, when you're freeing up your time as an owner, should continue to jump. Now, when you're hiring stateside, and then you've got to pay employment taxes and way higher salaries, it just adds up. It adds up to be at least, 75% more expensive than if you hire your entry-level admin staff positions offshore. And that's what we help our clients do. And that's where we've been able to help so many small business owners.
Absolutely. And, and that really applies also to different industries. I mean, it applies also to construction. I did an interview with Chad Gill, who is the CEO and founder of Laminin Coaching, and they help people find staff for construction, many construction industries where you have an assistant to an estimator, or somebody that can make the plans or do everything on the back office that not necessarily needs interaction with clients, or even interaction with clients. So that can work for any industry. So let's talk about your roadmap. So give us basically the summary of what a roadmap is. What are those 24 months consist of, and what is the sequence of hiring?
Sure. So as an entrepreneur, your time is the most valuable asset that you have in the company. So it's really about protecting your time, making a list of all the things that you're doing, and then starting to say no and to stop it. Like making more money, Adias, you probably know, and bringing in more business, not about doing more, it's about doing less, because of all the other things that the business needs to get done that we end up doing because we're wearing so many hats. So the first hire is an executive assistant, and just to get so many of the admin things off your plate that are getting in the way of you as the entrepreneur being more successful. And then from there, especially if you're a service-based business, it's not doing what's called flushing your marketing money down the golden toilet, which is don't spend your time networking or on digital marketing only to flush it all down the toilet because you don't have somebody who answers the phone the right way, and then a system to convert potential clients into paying clients. And that's what designing that system is all about. And then it's a marketing assistant. So I've never met a business owner that doesn't need a marketing assistant, somebody to take all.
Marketing assistant is hire number 2.
Number 3, it's really the full-time receptionist, the person.
The receptionist to answer
answer
absolutely,
the phone,
yes.
Follow up, set up your meetings, and help convert people. And so, third is the marketing assistant. Now, could you switch those two around and argue, well, before the phone rings, I need the marketing assistant to make the phone? Well, sure, you could. I can accept. I'm not going to die on the hill where it has to be these 7 in the exact order. But entrepreneurs, we usually have 100 new marketing ideas before we get to work on a Monday. And when you don't have somebody to give those ideas to run with, they end up just stacking up on your mental shelf, and you either never get to them or they cause clutter. And then you do scattershot marketing. So making sure your marketing is very consistent, where you start an email newsletter, but it goes out twice a month, not, sending it out for 2 months, and then people stop hearing from you because you did get some business, and then you do the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys, and you can make yourself look bad when you don't have your consistent marketing out there. So the fourth one I talk about in the book is an intake coordinator. And again, this is geared towards service-based businesses, but that's before you get on the phone, someone else who's going to qualify leads and then book meetings for you. One of the analogies I use is like a doctor. Like if you needed some sort of major surgery, and most lawyers were dealing with major problems, right? And the doctor answered the phone, or the doctor was right next to the person who answered the phone and jumped on the phone with you and started talking to you, you'd be like, wait a minute, this doctor can't be good. Like, there's no way I'm letting him or her operate on me, right? Because you'd be like, it would be an automatic mental impression that would be created in your head, and you would make up stories about that lawyer, because the best surgeon in the world doesn't have time to sit around and answer the phone or to jump on the phone when you like. They walk in and do surgery and walk out, and that's what, protecting your time. You should, as a business owner, you should only get in those high level meetings with clients and not with the tire kickers. Due respect to the people out there that maybe can't afford your services, but you want to save your time from dealing with those people. The fifth one I talk about is somebody to take care of your finances, like a billing clerk. In the service industry, we end up having tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes over 100, in money that for work we've already done, but that we haven't collected because we haven't sent out the invoices. Right. So many entrepreneurs will take a Saturday or Sunday to get all their billing done, to send out their invoices, to try to collect. And it's like, that's a horrible use of your time. You're not spending time with your family. You're not spending time working on the business. You're not spending time getting refreshed. And it's showing up in your business in a lot of ways. The sixth one, and you can interject, but I'm almost to the end here. The sixth one is an assistant to do the actual work that you need done. And that's the one that I say, look, maybe you want that person in-house. Maybe there's some virtue to having your first like tangible assistant doing the actual work of the company. Like if you're in an industry where it's not all electronic, right? Like a chiropractor, a dentist, a doctor, again, a lot of service-based businesses. And then the last one is somebody who's going to really separate you from your competition. And that's called a client happiness coordinator or a client concierge. Somebody who's going to take the time to make sure that you as the business stand out, and the experience that your clients will have with your business will just be different, which will lead to more referrals, right? And it helps the cycle keep going.
Absolutely. So tell me more about the client concierge. What do you have them do?
So calls to past clients just to check in on them and say, how are you doing? Calls to current clients, surveys to current and past clients. Gift, there's a really good book called Giftology that we tell our clients to have their client happiness coordinators read. It's really the art of doing thoughtful gifts, not just holiday gifts. Just going above and beyond. Really, we could get into different types of businesses would have their client concierge or client happiness coordinator do different things, but ways to really make your business stand out.
Absolutely. So, my thought, I love that. And I can see why it's a roadmap. You need to get there. So it seems to me that in the beginning, your executive assistant should be able to wear all those hats. Still, as an executive, you don't have to wear all those hats. The executive assistant depends on your size of the business and the volume of calls, right? Like you started, it was just you, right, as a lawyer, and then you grew up to what? Like, how many do you have now? 7, 8?
Like 11 lawyers, yeah.
11. Next time we did a podcast, it was 7. So we grew for another 4. So now it really, like, a dedicated receptionist is needed. But if it's only you and another person, it might be that your executive assistant will also be able to handle the calendars and answer the phone, right? Or send gifts, etc. So you can still have those functions taken away from you, given to somebody else. But as the team grows, then you expand and expand and expand, right?
Yeah, Yeah, that's spot on. That's exactly what I say in the book, Adi, is that your executive assistant should be really good. They should do a little bit of the phone answering, some of the actual tangible help, some of the billing. Like their job is to help you in what's really keeping you from doing more of the actual job and more of the bringing in the business. So their
Right.
job is to put time back on your plate. You don't want to overwhelm them and say, here's the whole business though, right? Like, especially on day one, that's not going to work. So as soon as possible, your next hire, you can look at it like you're getting your executive assistant relief so they don't either kill you first or quit. Like but yes, you should load them up with as much as possible.
Absolutely. What is your take on training that personnel? Let's say, okay, I'm bringing them on, I have my roadmap for the next 24 months. How do I train those people?
Well, that's kind of why it's not, hire 7 people at one time. We lay out a system so that it's like every 3 or 4 months, you're hiring the next person because you need 3 or 4 months to train and to make sure that that person's doing a good job. We all do this. We all make the mistake of hiring somebody before we have the job description really built out. And then we want to have all the time in the world to train that person, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it's have a very descriptive but brief job description of 5 to 7 repeatable tasks that person is going to perform, and then have a weekly scorecard to check in on their progress and what they've been doing. And then the first few weeks, you want to have daily meetings, and then every time you speak to them, record those meetings so that when you're explaining something, they go back to the recording instead of back to you. Over time, you're going to have fewer and fewer meetings until you have a meeting rhythm. Maybe it's once per day, maybe it's 3 times per week, maybe it's once per week for 90 minutes, whatever it is. It depends. Your executive assistant, you're probably going to talk to multiple times per day. Somebody like your, I don't know, another person, because this is not just for you, but as you're growing the business, you can get executive assistants for other, highly paid salary people in your entity. But a billing clerk, maybe you speak to once per week. It really just depends, and it depends on the size of your company, of course, as well.
Absolutely, I agree. It's also, that's really when having great processes come into play, right? I can tell you from my own company, of course we do it for other companies, but in my own, the way that I was able to actually grow. And it's funny because I actually follow the same pattern, because, it was an executive assistant. In my case, she can also do the calendaring and answering the phone. But I also have the second one was the marketing assistant, because I know how important it is. And then somebody that can help with the client delivery, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely, I agree with that map. In terms of training, what I find is definitely recording, but then also have them write it as a process. So then it can go to the next person, or the next person you're going to hire that might be in a different position, but they still need to be cross-trained, et cetera. So I think that is also very important to do. So you actually have a roadmap there to follow, like actual instructions, right? It's like a recipe.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Okay, good. So what would you say to an entrepreneur that is listening to us and he says, yes, well, that sounds like a great dream, but there is no way that I can delegate to an exec. I can delegate, I don't have the time. I'm running around. I don't know how to delegate. I tried it before, it didn't work. All these kind of negative thoughts that cross our minds. What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, the person that says they're too busy, I always ask them, like, are you really too busy to be less busy? Because that'll never fix itself. You're not going to just one day not be busy unless something went horribly wrong. So, can you really not carve out a few hours per week or an hour per day to train someone who's going to save you 5 times that? Like, that's kind of silly, right? That's an excuse. The people who said I tried it before, my response to that is, that would be like trying to ride a bike one time and you fell, and then you're like, bikes are stupid, I'm never riding a bike again. And you're like, bikes don't work, bikes are dumb. But every day you see people riding their bike right in front of you to get from point A to point B. But you're like, oh no, bikes are I think they're bad for business. It's like, You can't try. It could have been you. You could have been really bad at training, and that's fair. We all make that mistake. That's not a judgment thing. You just have to own that. You could have hired a really poor person. You could have hired a good person that you ruined again because you didn't do a good job. You could have sworn that you were gonna make the time and you didn't. Or you're just at a different place in your business. So you can't just you can just give up and say it's not for you, but then you'll never grow. And hopefully you're not making that kind of excuse. So I guess I have a different response to all of those excuses, as you said, that people make. But that's a mindset thing. And I think it's frustrating when people, oh no, I can't because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, have you ever taken the time to really think through why you're saying that? Because you're either saying it to make yourself feel better about something, or you have a really big need to be right, or you just are drifting and you haven't taken the time to really think through what is appropriate for your business.
Absolutely. So I think the common denominator of all those answers is basically just do it, if you want to use the cliche, but just do it and turn off those noises, turn off those questions, those doubts, right? Because you want to do it so you can actually move forward and you can actually scale your business. Because as you said, if you're going to stop being busy, then something is really wrong. So then it will defer you to a marketing company so you can get more leads, because otherwise it's not going to happen. And you don't want to hope to be less busy. I mean, that's not what we're going for. We want you to be busier and do better, and then be able to actually hire more. So that's for sure the goal we are going for.
Right. And I think, first of all, on the cover of the book, you can see here, that's a hamster who has left the hamster wheel behind. And so many people, the hustle culture is like, hustle, grind, wake up and grind, and all these dumb, catchphrases that people use, in my opinion anyway. Because you can work really hard, but if you're on the hamster wheel, then you're in the same spot as when you started, day after day after day, and you're eventually going to start running slower, and then you're like, oh, this is not for me, it doesn't work. And I think that's sad. You have to remove yourself from just running so fast with your blinders on and not going anywhere, that you think through these kind of things, which is pretty much what you just said.
Absolutely. Well, Brett, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast again. I mean, you gave us definitely a lot of, that roadmap is very important, because people ask, who is the first hire? What's the first hire I should make? What's the second hire I should make, etc. But you just really laid it out so beautifully that we can just, what is left is just basically following it, which is great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And the other thing is we do staffing, but sometimes we lose clients because they didn't, we give some help, some onboarding help, right? But we're not creating the systems, because we're not business coaches, we're not consultants. And that's why, you would know, if you set up the right system and put that in place, that's going to help you succeed. And so it's just really important that you find great people, but then you put those people in a good system to set them up for success. And that's why meeting more entrepreneurs like yourself and collaborating has been so helpful, because we can't do it alone. We can't just find you great people and then wave a magic wand. There's still other work to be done.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. So for our listeners, definitely go into Amazon, 24 Months to Freedom, which is, you have to read that book. And Brett Trembly, find him they can find you on social media, Get Stuffed Up. A lot of places to find you.
Yeah, the easiest one for now, though, is you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. And otherwise, if you go to getstaffedup.com/system simplified, we've got a landing page just for your listeners. And it has a link to the book, as well as a special offer if anybody wanted to work with us.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I definitely will include it in the show notes.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Adi, for having me again. It was really fun to catch up.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.